I never imagined I'd be grateful for installing security cameras around my backyard, but they ended up being the key witnesses in what would later be called the Great HOA Scandal in our otherwise peaceful neighborhood of Maplewood Heights. My name is Lisa Carter, and this is the story of how our Homeowners Association president's personal vendetta against my home improvement project turned into a felony case that made headlines. I had always dreamed of updating my backyard pool, which had been installed back in the 90s and was starting to show signs of wear. The outdated tiles were cracking, the filtration system was inefficient, and the design no longer matched the modern aesthetic I envisioned for my home. After a particularly successful year in my architectural firm, I finally had the funds to bring my dream to life. As a meticulous planner, I followed every requirement in the HOA handbook to the letter. I submitted detailed blueprints, material samples, and even a 3D rendering to illustrate how the renovation would maintain the community's aesthetic. The upgrades included modern safety features, an energy-efficient pump, and a fresh new tile design that would enhance the backyard without being obtrusive. The HOA board meeting to approve the project went smoothly, with 4 out of 5 members voting in favor. The lone dissenting voice, Margaret Benson, the newly appointed HOA president, who took issue with my choice of blue tiles, claiming they were too European and did not fit the traditional American aesthetic of our neighborhood. The other board members dismissed her concern as trivial, and I was given the green light to proceed. However, Margaret was not one to let things go. A few days after approval, I received my first warning letter. Apparently, my grass was half an inch too tall. A week later, another citation arrived. My mailbox did not have enough reflective material. When I installed a security camera for my front door, explicitly permitted under HOA guidelines, I received yet another violation notice for having unauthorized surveillance equipment. Every letter was signed with Margaret's name, always accompanied by a little smiley face that somehow made it feel even more condescending. I suspected she was targeting me, but I tried to stay calm and handle things professionally. It soon became clear, however, that Margaret was just getting started. As construction on my pool renovation began, Margaret's interference intensified. Every morning, she parked her white SUV across the street, watching my workers and taking detailed notes on her tablet. Occasionally, she would step out, snapping photos of their work, her face twisted in disapproval. One day, I decided to confront her. "Margaret, is there something specific you're concerned about?" My renovation was fully approved by the board. She gave me her signature smirk. "Oh, Lisa, I'm just ensuring everything is done by the book. We wouldn't want any violations now, would we?" She then proceeded to file multiple complaints, each more absurd than the last. The tiles were too glossy, the pool cover was too modern, and, perhaps the most ridiculous, the renovation crew's truck was parked at an inappropriate angle. The final straw came when I received an emergency stop order from the HOA, citing a newly discovered rule stating that all pool depth markers had to be in Times New Roman font. The rule was, of course, nowhere in the official HOA documentation. When I confronted Margaret, she simply sipped her wine and said, "Oh, you must not have the updated version. That's for president's eyes only." I was furious but determined to handle the situation legally. What I didn't know at the time was that Margaret was about to take things to a whole new level of insanity. That night, as I was working late in my home office, I heard an unusual noise outside. Checking my security cameras, I was horrified to see a cement truck pulling up near my backyard. And there, standing with a clipboard, was Margaret Benson herself, directing the workers with an air of authority. I grabbed my phone and sprinted outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Margaret barely flinched. "Lisa, dear, this pool has been declared a community hazard. I'm executing an emergency abatement order." She waved a document in front of me, but it wasn't a legal permit. It was just an HOA agenda with handwritten notes. The workers, looking increasingly uncomfortable, hesitated as they glanced between Margaret and me. "I don't see any city permits," one of them muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "We're supposed to have proper authorization." "I am the authorization," Margaret snapped. "This is an HOA decision, and I am the president. Do you want to be blacklisted from future community contracts?" Before I could call the police, fate intervened. Margaret had been pacing near an exposed underground power line marked by my contractor. In her arrogance, she had ignored the warning markers. Just as she barked another order to the workers, Her designer sneaker clipped a raised section of ground. A loud pop erupted as sparks shot into the air, followed by an eerie silence before half the neighborhood went dark. The security floodlights flickered before going out completely. The cement truck driver swore loudly and scrambled to shut off the machinery. Margaret stood frozen, her face illuminated by the remaining streetlights. Panic flickered in her eyes as she fumbled with her phone. This is just a minor issue," she stammered. "It's..." Just then, a police cruiser, already on patrol, slowed down at the sight of the commotion. Officer James Rodriguez stepped out, his flashlight sweeping over the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Margaret straightened her shoulders. "Officer, this is a private HOA matter. We're addressing a community violation." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "At midnight? With a cement truck and no permits?" Margaret faltered. Well, as HOA president, Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification and legal documentation for this work." I took the opportunity to step forward, showing the officer my phone with the security footage I had recorded. "I'm the homeowner, and I never authorized this." The cement truck workers, now fully aware of the illegality of the situation, began packing up their equipment. "We're out of here," the driver muttered. "Not worth the trouble." Margaret, in a last-ditch effort, screeched, "You can't leave. I'll sue your company. This is a contracted job." But the workers ignored her, quickly climbing back into the truck and reversing down the street. Rodriguez shook his head. "Ma'am, you've caused a power outage and attempted to destroy someone's private property. We'll need to take statements and investigate this further. You may want to call a lawyer." Margaret's face turned ghostly white. The chaos that followed was poetic justice at its finest. The next day, while reviewing security footage with my lawyer, we discovered something shocking. Margaret wasn't just abusing her HOA power out of personal spite. She was involved in something much bigger, a scheme so calculated that it extended far beyond my backyard pool renovation. A quiet investigation by HOA board member Janet Wilson, who had long suspected financial irregularities, revealed that Margaret had been systematically inflating fines and diverting the excess funds into a secret bank account she controlled. She had orchestrated an elaborate web of fraudulent charges, ensuring that homeowners were constantly caught in an endless cycle of minor infractions, forced to pay inflated fees under the guise of community maintenance. Many residents had already been financially burdened, with some even forced to sell their homes due to mounting fines. But the most damning discovery came when we traced Margaret's frantic midnight text messages. The recipient? Frank Morrison, a notorious real estate developer with a history of orchestrating hostile HOA takeovers. Margaret had been working in direct collaboration with Frank, feeding him information on struggling homeowners while manipulating HOA policies to devalue properties within our neighborhood. Their strategy was ruthless yet effective. Margaret would drive down property values through excessive rule enforcement and arbitrary violations, making homeownership an unbearable experience. Frustrated residents, unable to keep up with ever-changing regulations, would either be fined into submission or pressured to sell. Once property values had plummeted sufficiently, Frank's company would swoop in, acquiring homes at dirt-cheap prices before redeveloping the entire community into high-end luxury condos. Margaret's interference with my pool renovation had not just been about her personal dislike of my project. It had threatened their entire plan. My investment in my property, along with its aesthetic and functional improvements, had the potential to increase surrounding property values, undermining their goal of an easy takeover. This explained why Margaret had become so relentless in her pursuit to sabotage my project. It was never about community standards. It was about maintaining control and ensuring the neighborhood was ripe for exploitation. Armed with this information, we compiled all evidence: bank records, internal emails, and the fraudulent violation notices. What had started as an irritating feud over pool tiles had turned into an expose on deep-seated corruption, and we were just getting started in taking Margaret and Frank down. Once the full scope of Margaret's scheme came to light, the district attorney filed charges against her for fraud, conspiracy, and vandalism. She eventually took a plea deal: 2 years in prison, hefty fines, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board. Under new leadership, the HOA was completely restructured. Transparency became a priority, financial records were made publicly accessible, and arbitrary rule changes were abolished. And best of all, my pool renovation was finally completed, Mediterranean blue tiles and all. To celebrate, I hosted a neighborhood pool party, where someone suggested we add a plaque by the pool. The inscription? This pool survived corruption, cement, and Margaret, and so did we. As for Margaret, rumor has it she tried forming an inmate advisory committee in prison. It didn't go over well. Lessons from the story. This story is proof that no matter how much power someone thinks they have, they're not above the law, and they certainly can't get away with playing real-life Monopoly with people's homes. Standing up for yourself isn't just about personal victories. It's about making sure bullies like Margaret don't get to rewrite the rules in their favor. If no one speaks up, they'll keep pushing boundaries until they own the whole board. This story serves as a powerful reminder that no one has the right to abuse their position to control and manipulate others. When we stand firm and fight for what is right, the truth will ultimately prevail. Even as an individual, you can make a significant impact if you have the courage to stand up for justice and your rights. Meaningful message. Justice doesn't work on an honor system. It needs people willing to call out corruption, expose bad actors, and demand fairness. Margaret thought she could intimidate her way into controlling the neighborhood, but the moment people stopped letting her push them around, her house of cards collapsed. Never let fear silence you when you see wrongdoing, because if you don't stop it, no one else will. Justice is not only upheld by those in power, but also by the unity of the community. When people come together to speak out against injustice, we can create a fairer and more transparent environment. The most important thing is never to let fear silence you in the face of wrongdoing. Personal perspective. To be honest, this whole situation felt like something straight out of an episode of Parks and Recreation. Except instead of Leslie Knope, we got a full-fledged HOA dictator who thought she was untouchable. The level of entitlement here was Olympic-level impressive. But like every good villain, she had a downfall, her own arrogance. I've always believed that patience, intelligence, and persistence win in the end, and this story is living proof of that. I believe that patience, intelligence, and determination always lead to positive outcomes. When we face challenges with perseverance and a strong will, righteousness will ultimately win. This story is not just about fighting against abuse of power, but also about proving how a single individual, supported by a united community, can bring about real change. If you love real-life stories where justice prevails, where corrupt people get their karma, and where a single individual stands up and wins big, then you'll love what we do on Story Precious. We bring you wild, jaw-dropping true stories that will make you laugh, think, and maybe even feel a little bit better about that one annoying neighbor you have. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community of justice-loving story fans. We'll see you in the next video, hopefully with less cement-related HOA drama. If you enjoy real-life stories about justice, perseverance, and life lessons, don't forget to follow and subscribe to this Story Precious channel. We bring you inspiring stories, deep insights, and meaningful messages to help you stay motivated. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. See you in the next story.